Hey guys, it's Grace Harris, the communications director, and I am here with Larry Mayberry, the pastor and planter of Queens Church. Larry, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and just kind of give us an update on Queens Church. So Larry, if you don't mind, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe the genesis of Queens Church?
Absolutely, yeah. I have been here in Queens planting churches since 2011. So my wife and I moved here from Houston before this, and we had one child when we moved here. Now we have four. So we have three boys, 14, 12, and 10, and a girl who is 5. And our vision and our goal is just to continue planting churches here in Western Queens. There's about 800,000 people here with a little over a dozen English-speaking gospel-centered churches. So our heart is to be rooted in this community deeply and to see there be churches planted around it so that the next few generations can have Christian neighbors, because the more churches that are started, the more people become disciples, and the more times there are for people who may be born and raised without a Christian neighbor to actually have a Christian neighbor to hear about the good news of Jesus. So that's what we're doing here.
So the neighborhood, I know you're in Woodside, Queens.
That's right.
Can you tell us a little bit about the neighborhood of Woodside?
Yeah, so like most of Queens, Woodside's very ethnically diverse. About half of the people who live here are born somewhere other than the United States. And so we minister to a lot of immigrants and a lot of first and second generation immigrants as well. Our section of Woodside, we serve the Woodside Houses, which is a New York City Housing Authority projects. That's where the kind of the heart and the genesis of our church came from, was from serving that neighborhood, getting to know the people there, and finding out that since it was built in the late 50s, there had never been a church that served this neighborhood and these projects. So when we heard that, the person who was telling us that was the tenant association president at the time. And she said, if you plant a church here, then I'll come, and I think it'll be great for the neighborhood. So about 2 years after that is when we finally did plant Queens Church. So our church is a lot like our neighborhood. There are over 20 different nations represented in our church. That's people who were born in those other countries. So people from all over Latin America and all over Europe and Asia have come to this country, and some of them as Christians in our church, but then also we've seen 45 people give their life to Jesus and be baptized in the last 4 years through the ministry of Queens Church.
Praise the Lord.
And
Wow.
So a lot of brand new life and a lot of life change has come out of the ministry of Queens Church and the presence of new believers in a neighborhood, like in mass. So, if you think a church hasn't been here in decades and decades, and then all of a sudden people just start getting saved, then neighbors hear about it, and then coworkers hear about it. And so that's kind of how our church has come to grow, is through neighbors telling neighbors and friends and family telling family about Jesus.
Wow. It's like a domino effect, right?
Exactly.
That's awesome. So I think if I'm remembering correctly, was it last Easter that you guys swapped to having 2 services?
We did, yeah, Easter 2023. So we came into this new space. We built out a space I'm sitting in now, where we have 24 hours now, and it seats 91 people in the sanctuary, the way we have it set up. And we were averaging about 70 or so people when we moved into the space, and quickly we filled it up. And so Easter 2020, we went to 2 services and have seen continued growth. Last week there was 125 people at church, and that's become kind of the norm. So it's really exciting.
Wow.
I mean, this is not like average, we've been planting churches here for 12 years, and I've never experienced anything like this. I tell our church, I came from small churches. My dad's a pastor, and he was always a small church pastor. And Queens Church is the largest church I've ever been a member of.
Wow.
So we're all just learning together at this point.
No, that's amazing. That's truly a God story just in it of itself, your space. Yeah. Because I do remember, I guess about a year and a half ago, I was riding in your car. You were driving, I think myself, Wes, and Kevin, and we were passing in like every corner. You were like, we used to meet there. We used to meet there.
That's it.
Met someone about that,
This is our 9th location.
Ninth. And hopefully just home, permanent. It sounds like
and
there's roots there.
We moved in February 13th. 2023. So almost coming up on a year.
Thank you for sharing what you have. Is there something specific in this season that BCNY, MNYBA, we can, all of the churches, pastors, how can we be praying for you in this season?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you can imagine, with the vision being to continue to plant churches, we are looking forward to the potential next church plant as our space. We're kind of landlocked with our space here. So when we get up to a high enough amount in our second service, the vision would be to plant another church. So we have people who live in different pockets around Queens, and we would like to identify one of those and see a church planter raised up from within our congregation and send out some people to plant another church. So you can definitely be praying for that. It seems like that might happen in 25 or 26, somewhere around there. That's a big thing you pray for. And then also, now that we've gotten sort of like a critical mass and we have leaders who are being raised up out of our own congregation, we called our first lay elder and installed him back in November of last year. So now that those type of things are happening, we're kind of crossing the threshold from church plant into hope becoming like a teenager as a church, growing up and being on our own. So just prayer for continued growth in depth of our spirituality, and that our discipleship will continue to thrive, so that all of these new believers who are just now starting to chew on scripture, just now starting to figure out what it's like to suffer with faith, or to have times of hopelessness or depression or sadness in the midst of their faith, and not turn from Jesus, but to turn farther into him. Just pray for spiritual maturity for the many people who have just become Christians here at Queens Church. Those are a couple of things: spiritual maturity, and then the continuation of this vision to plant more churches.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, we'll definitely share that message and ask people to pray. Larry, thank you so much for just the way that you serve your community. And
absolutely,
it's amazing to see what God has done through your congregation over the last 12 years. So even though I've only been here for 5, but I know you're a legend. So thank you for what you do. And I appreciate you for meeting with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace.